Coming up on Inside Westwood, hear from Superintendent Emily Parks on the status of the elementary building project. Hear from Nora Loughnane as she gives us our in-depth community update, and we get the winter sports update from the Westwood High School teams. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Inside Westwood. I'm your host, John Cummings, reporting from the Westwood Media Center. Inside Westwood is designed to update the community on what just happened, what's going on, and what's coming up. Our town is looking to improve upon the Deerfield, Sheehan, and Hale schools. These buildings are at least 60 years old and inadequate for what the students need. Here to talk with us about the next steps is our superintendent, Emily Parks. Emily, thank you very much for coming down. I know you've been really busy lately, especially with all the school days.
The weather has been presenting some challenges, that's for sure. Thanks for having me, John. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, this is a very exciting thing. Last time we had you on, you talked about the possibility of getting into the queue of, or perhaps we're going into the queue. And so the next steps for the new buildings, or the, what is it called?
For our proposed elementary building project
Exactly.
with the MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority. So that's right. The last time I talked to you was, I think, the beginning of December. And at that time, we had applied to get invited into this process with the MSBA. And since then, I'm excited to tell you that we did, in fact, succeed in getting invited into this process.
That was very nice.
So now, as a town, we have just this tremendous opportunity. It's really exciting. Just to remind folks, so the issue here is that in Westwood we have 5 elementary schools, and 3 of our elementary buildings are quite old at this point. They're about 70 years old. And so we're really trying to figure out how we're going to address the needs that we have in these 3 buildings, Hanlon, Deerfield, and Sheehan.
Let me just say for a second that having a school building 70 years old, still operational, kudos and my hat's off to you, to the facility team, keeping everything up and running.
Thank you. I appreciate your saying that. We have a wonderful operations department, and one of the things that we're really committed to is taking good care of our facilities. And I think that when people come in from the outside to some of our older buildings, they can see that they are well maintained. They're shiny and clean, and you can tell a lot of care is taken. We invest.
The custodial staff, you would think they're taking care of their own homes.
Yeah, absolutely. So we invest in the upkeep of our buildings. But the analogy that I'm making is that sometimes if you're driving a 1997 Saturn, even if you keep changing the oil, there's a point at which you have to decide if you're going to continue to invest in that vehicle or if it's time to get a new car. So that's sort of the point that we're at in some of these buildings. They're safe, teaching and learning is happening, kids are happy, teachers are working hard, but we have a need as a community to think about how we're going to solve this problem that we have, and solve it for probably the next 50 years. So it's a big decision that we need to make.
With aging buildings, you have so much cost. At some point, where do you cut the losses and come up with a new building that will be much easier to maintain and be much more appropriate for what we're doing with them?
That's exactly it. And I do want to emphasize that we haven't decided that building brand new is the solution. There are other possibilities that involve perhaps a major renovation project, something like that. But at the end of the day, doing nothing isn't really an option. No. And so we need to think about how we're going to take on this issue. And so the great news is that we've been invited to participate in this process through the MSBA. It's a state-funded competitive grant program. And it provides partial reimbursement to local municipalities for the renovation or construction of school buildings. And so assuming that the town, the community decides to go forward in this process, ultimately we could potentially get about 1/3 of a construction project reimbursed.
That's
so it's a big opportunity. So since I last spoke, we have been busy. We have started what we're calling our community engagement process. All of the residents of Westwood received a letter from me and from the school committee chair, Carol Lewis, explaining what the situation is. and we've been holding a series of meetings. I've been making the rounds to the PTOs. We have a big community forum coming up on, let's see, Thursday, March 20th at 7 p.m. at the Hanlon School. All residents are invited to learn more about our needs and to provide input to the committee, to ask questions. So I encourage people to attend.
So the next steps in the process is you're going to go to the town and you'll be looking for money. Can you explain perhaps why the buildings need to be updated and how much we're looking for from the town?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I think there are a couple of issues. So as I mentioned, in aging buildings, sometimes the systems just start to fail. So, you know, the electrical systems, the plumbing systems, some of these are original to the buildings. And I may have mentioned this before. For example, we're dealing with some disintegrating pipes at the Hanlon School.
Yes.
We tried to get some plumbing work done and nobody would bid the project, right? Yeah. You know, roofs, even if you maintain them and patch them and repair them, at some point they need to be replaced. So we have those kinds of issues. Our HVAC systems, a lot of these schools, the heat it's on or off, and it's either hot or cold, and there's sort of nothing in between. So that's one of our issues. But beyond that, we're really thinking about how the physical space of our school buildings does or doesn't match our educational programming and our educational needs. So, you know, these buildings that we have that were built in the late 40s and early 50s, they were built at a very different time when teaching and learning in elementary schools looked different, when, you know, special education wasn't really on anybody's radar. And
I don't even remember special ed when I was in school.
Yeah. And so, you know, we have buildings that weren't built for the kind of educational services that we provide today in the 21st century, and that poses some challenges. We don't have sufficient office space. We don't have what we call breakout spaces where professionals can be working with small groups of students.
What are they using now?
Well, in most cases, we're using closets that have been converted into these spaces. We call them cloffices. So some of them formerly were custodial closets that we have converted into office space and also small group space. In other cases, we have small tables and chairs that we have lining hallways in schools. And
I've seen that.
So we pull out groups into hallways, which, you know, it isn't ideal. It's not an ideal.
Not a lot of privacy
scenario.
in the middle of the hallway.
Not a lot of privacy. So we have some of those challenges, and then beyond that, just some challenges that have to do with the kinds of learning experiences that we want to give students. A big initiative we have in Westwood right now is around science education, and you know, we find that you need a lot of room to be doing exploratory inquiry-based science with kids. So, you know, just to give people a sense of this, there are sort of modern day standards for how big an elementary classroom would be. And the standard is between 950 square feet and 1,300 square feet. And in our classrooms, we have some classrooms that are that size, but many of our classrooms are smaller than that. So about 90% of the classrooms at Sheehan, for example, are undersized as compared to that standard. So we have some classrooms at Sheehan that are as small as 685 square feet. And that's quite limiting for us.
I mean, when I was in school, we had rows. You might have, you know, 28 to 30 kids in a room, all lined up in rows. I imagine that's not how it's done anymore.
No. If you've been in an elementary classroom recently, you know that that we're about student-centered learning, where kids are active, where they're collaborating, where they're in different groups, where they're moving from center to center. And so, yeah, we don't see many elementary classrooms with kids sitting in rows with teacher-led instruction, at least not for a significant portion of the day. That occasionally happens.
Couldn't probably even move 30, 35 desks into different clusters anymore. And those, like in the Hanlon, when I've walked in and see them broken up into groups.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So you know, those are some of the challenges. Beyond that, just if we think about you know, some of the sort of specialty spaces, we have elementary schools, the Deerfield Elementary, for example, the art room there was originally built to be a locker room. It's a tiny little space,
It's a very creative space.
It's a very creative space. We're using it creatively. It requires descending a set of stairs to get to it. That's another issue with our buildings. They're not ADA compliant in many cases. And so the Deerfield Art Room is a tiny little space. If you go out and take a look at elementary buildings that were built more recently, you see these sort of beautiful facilities. They're spacious, they have lots of light, they have stations for, with sinks and the kinds of things that you would
Cleaning
expect to see.
stations in an art room?
Cleaning stations in an art room, particularly important at the elementary level. So that, libraries is another example. We have elementary libraries that weren't built to be libraries. They were originally classrooms. The stacks, the bookshelves go up, 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 which doesn't work when you're about this tall. Right. And modern day libraries are being used for different things, for maker spaces.
Media centers.
For media centers, exactly. And so, we have a vision of what we want education to look like in Westwood, and we want to make sure that our space allows us to realize that.
Oh, wow. So the next steps in the process is you need to do some kind of preliminary investigation? Or?
Right. So we've been invited into what the MSBA calls the eligibility phase. And frankly, I believe that the objective of the eligibility phase is for the MSBA to assess whether or not there's the community will to go forward with the project. And so they want to know that the will is there before they commit the dollars. And so the eligibility phase is a 9-month period where there are some deliverables that we have to get to the MSBA, and that some of it is work we have to do in the school department around explaining what our needs are. But the big deliverable in terms of the community is that we need at town meeting to approve a warrant article, and the warrant article would permit the town to borrow an amount not to exceed $1.75 million, and that money would fund what's called the feasibility study. And that is about a 30-month process that takes place once we move out of this eligibility phase. And so that money would be used to hire what's called an OPM, the owner's project manager, somebody who has a real expertise in this area, and also to work with a designer, an architect, who would walk us through as a community all the different possible solutions to meet our needs, ultimately whittling down those possibilities to one preferred solution, and then to create the schematic designs for that preferred solution so that we're ready then to ultimately move forward.
So take all the information right down to the architectural drawings of what we as a community have decided.
Yeah, exactly. And at that point, we would have assuming that we went forward, there would be another decision to be made at town meeting about funding the actual construction project.
Well, the money that, assuming that Westwood is usually really strong about their education, which is why we're a blue ribbon education.
Yes.
And let's say that we borrowed no more than 1.75, but we used $1 million of it. Mm-hmm. Is that part of the reimbursement?
That's a great question. So yes, assuming that the project did ultimately move forward to the construction phase, then yes, a significant portion of that design money for the feasibility study would be subject to the reimbursement from MSBA. So we could expect to get approximately a third of that money that we borrowed for the feasibility study back.
They don't usually offer much money.
No.
So to get any is an excellent job.
And I do want to emphasize that the borrowing is for amount not to exceed $1.75 million. We hope and anticipate that in fact we will end up borrowing less than that. But in order to make sure that we're in fact ready to do whatever might come our way, we need to get that assurance.
You have to make sure you're prepared for any kind of tangibles.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Is there anything else that you'd like to let everybody know that's watching the show that's going to go to the town meeting and vote? Yeah,
well, I just encourage people to to come to our community forum, to check out our website. We have a specially designated website. It's www.westwoodschoolbuilding.com, and All of the communications that we are producing go on the website. We just had tours 2 weeks ago of our
excellent.
buildings. Thank you. The Westwood Media Center was there to video the tours, and so residents, I think, quite soon will be able
You'll be able to virtually watch it from the Westwood Media Center, as well as all the links that Ms. Parks is now mentioning.
Right, so there are plenty of ways to get information, and I would say to anyone, if there is a question that is unanswered, please feel free to reach out to anybody at the school department. We are happy to answer questions, and I hope that people will come to town meeting and be part of the process.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you very much.
Great.
I appreciate it, and good luck. And
Thanks, John.
Everyone get out there and vote. Thank you. Westwood is always changing and improving, but it can be hard to keep up with it all. Nora Loughnane stopped by to give us an update on everything that's coming up. Thank you for coming down.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. It is a little difficult with the snow in New England, since everything still has to be done in the same amount of time. So it's that much more difficult when you have to cancel and reschedule hearings.
And
But
all the meetings?
We're getting through it, yes. Lots of meetings, lots canceled, lots of snow rescheduling. So
Well, I hope everybody's staying
managing.
tuned to the Westwood Media Center. If you're unable to make the meetings, that we have them all covered, and you should check out our homepage.
And all the new meeting dates are posted on the webpage, so whenever something's scheduled, whenever the snow cancels it, the new schedule date is posted on the website.
Or more important, you can watch right here and get it live from Nora. So what's up with the new University Station?
The most timely event is Del Frisco's. Del
Ooh.
Frisco's is open for business. They have their ribbon cutting scheduled for tomorrow at 10:30 a.m.
Friday.
And Friday at 10:30 a.m. and they will be open from then on. So I encourage everyone who has a chance to get down to Del Frisco's. Food is great.
We should
The
try that out.
atmosphere is terrific, too.
Meet everybody there.
Anyone who can make it. So they'll be open normal restaurant hours from here on out. So we're happy to welcome them to our community.
And Islington Center seems to be moving right along with all the meetings, and how's that going?
Well, it's going. So the planning board is reviewing the flexible multiple use overlay district special permit. They've had about 3 hearings on that so far. They were scheduled for hearing this past Tuesday, which got snowed out. So the hearing was changed till Tuesday, March 20th at 7 p.m. at the Downey School. And we encourage anyone who's interested in that project to attend that hearing. There'll be another hearing session after that on April 4th. That one will be a joint hearing session with the Conservation Commission. So the Conservation Commission members and the Planning Board members will be able to jointly discuss the project and weigh their concerns and figure out jointly solutions to any concerns that either board has. And then what we hope will be the final hearing session will be on April 10th. So keep those dates in mind. In the meantime, the project involves 4 articles for the May 7th town meeting, and those articles are being reviewed by the Finance and Warrant Commission. The FinCom has hearing dates set for March 26th and March 27th. The 26th will be for discussion of the articles, and the 27th is their backup date if they still need time to vote on them. So there are 4 articles that will be considered by the FinCom. 2 will be
Just for
Islington's session. There are far more articles that'll be considered for town meeting, but just for the Islington Center redevelopment project, there are 4 articles. 2 are selectmen-sponsored articles, and 2 are planning board-sponsored zoning amendment articles. So to walk you through those, the first article would be to authorize the selectmen to dispose of property in Islington Center, to sell property they have, to buy property, to exchange land, and receive funds. That would allow the project to go forward. The second vote would be a vote to allow the expenditure of funds that the town receives as part of this project to move, expand, and renovate Wentworth Hall. So Wentworth Hall is the building in Islington Center that houses the Islington Branch Library now. It's a historic building. It's been the former home to Westwood Town Hall, to several church groups and schools in the town over the years. It's where the initial town meeting took place. So it's an interesting building. It'll be moved, if this project is approved, it'll be moved across the street to where the municipal lot is now. It'll be renovated for a more up-to-date Islington Branch Library, and there'll be an addition that will be put on for the Youth and Family Services Office, and then a lower-level community space would be created to replace the community space that's now in the Islington Community Center.
Excellent.
So there'll be an article to allow the expenditure of funds to do just that.
And there'll be like a green area as well. Correct?
There'll be a green area. The latest plans, actually, I encourage anyone who hasn't seen them to go to the Planning Board's website and take a look at the latest plan set. It shows that building, Wentworth Hall, being moved across the street, and it also shows the Blue Heart Tavern a location next to that building, right up on Washington Street, to save the Blue Heart Tavern. When we last discussed this, that building is still, the final solution to it has not been reached, but at the last time we spoke, that had essentially been eliminated from the plans, and it's been brought back. So we found a place for it that would be right on Washington Street, and there would be still a need to come up with funds to restore that building. So we're still looking for a way to restore it and reuse it, but at least now we found a place for it, which we hadn't found before. So we're moving in the right direction.
Will be very happy.
It would be right between Wentworth Hall, the new library space, and Northeast Security, which is on Washington Street. That's that brick building just to the north. Yes, towards St. Denis, just to the north of the municipal parking lot. So both of the buildings would fit in that space. Oh. So that's an exciting change to the plans that are before the planning board now. It would provide space for Blue Heart Tavern and for Wentworth Hall with an addition. So take a look at the plans. They're interesting. There are also new renderings that were put up that show different views of Islington Center, looking at it from the east, the north, the west, and the south, to see what the project would look like with all the new buildings in place.
All right, so we'll have a link on our page to that, but if they want it from the town hall page, you go to the planning board?
You go to the planning board's webpage and you go to current planning applications, and you'll see the first application in the listing is the Islington Center redevelopment project, and you go down to the planning materials for the March 20th meeting. And if you click on that, you'll see all the materials, the latest plans and the new renderings. So I encourage people to take a look at it, and then to come to the planning board meeting and come to the Finance and Warrant Commission meetings as well to discuss the articles themselves. If you want to talk about the plans, though, and how the plans for the area could evolve, then the planning board is the board to speak to with that.
For any change, and then go to the FinCom and voice your opinion as well.
Right, that's right.
Yeah. Well, did you know that the developer came down a couple days ago and talked with Connor Lynch on the show Town Talk?
Oh, I didn't know
right
that.
Here
That's
in this
terrific.
very studio. So that's also available.
Great.
It was
Well, that should
really
be-
short, 15, 20 minutes, and it was excellent.
I'm sure it'll be informative.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
I'll look forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
So the other two articles that the FinCom will be looking at are two zoning articles. One of them would change the zoning of two properties that are part of this development that are currently zoned for residential use. One is where the Westwood Tailor Shop is, and one is a single-family home that's behind the municipal parking lot. So one of the articles takes both of those properties and puts them in the business zone and overlays them with the FMUOD overlay district to allow them to be developed as part of this project. The other zoning bylaw
Would that be part
change.
of the community center part, or?
They would be. They would both be part of the town-owned land. But I'm sorry, they wouldn't. Part of the School Street Tailor Shop lot would be town-owned. Part would be where CVS would go. The other parcel, the single-family home behind the municipal lot, that would be town-owned. That would allow for some open space, some buffer zone, and also for some parking for the relocated Wentworth Hall.
Okay.
And then the final article is a zoning article that would change the FMUOD requirements for FMUOD 6, which is the Washington Street Overlay District, to allow the planning board to approve a special permit for a retail or service use of up to 15,000 square feet. The bylaw now restricts it to no more than 10,000 square feet. And the proposed CVS building has a footprint of just over 13,000 square feet plus mezzanine storage that gets it up to just over 14,000 feet. So the article would need to be passed in order to build the CVS building as proposed on those plans. So those are the four articles, two non-zoning articles, two zoning articles, and any more information,
That's a lot. There's so
people
much
can get at
information.
the hearing.
I'm glad that you come down and people were able to check out what's going on right here and find out if they want to go deeper, where else they could go. What else is going on in Westwood right now?
So there are a couple of other proposals. One is for a senior housing project. I think we discussed this a little bit last time I was here. It's proposed for 215 High Street. A little bit more information has come in on that. It's scheduled for a hearing before the planning board on March 20th. It would be a total of 19 units, 11 single-family homes, and 8 townhouses. Those plans are also up on the website, so if anyone wants to look at those, they can. There's a zoning Board of Appeals application for a new Tesla dealership, actually right outside your studio up on Route 1. The former Audi Porsche dealership, which has been vacant for a while, is being looked at by Tesla. They are interested in moving there.
Tesla Auto.
Tesla Auto.
Okay.
Yes, Tesla Auto. So they would be interested in opening a car dealership there, and they are going before the zoning board for approval to do just that. The zoning board meeting is on the 21st of March, so if anyone has any
I'm glad you're
concerns,
keeping
comments
everything
about
straight.
that, they can come to that hearing as well.
Excellent.
And then, of course, if anyone has any specific questions on any application or any rumors they've heard or any proposals, they're always welcome to call staff at the town,
Get
and
the
we'd be
correct
happy to give
information
them the
before
right
you pass it
information.
on.
That's right.
I
Or just look at our website too. We post everything there so that people can stay up to date. We also, I think I mentioned last time I was here, we have a new online newsletter called Westwood Wire.
Yes, I've received it.
So we encourage people to enter their email address so they get that and stay up to date on all the
pretty good.
projects that are going on in town.
It's very well done. Well, is there anything else?
The only other thing I'd like to touch on is
Gay Street?
Gay Street is being considered for a redesign for pedestrian improvements. I haven't been to any meetings on that recently, so I'm not exactly sure where the process that is. I think the design will come over the summer. There are intersection improvements that are coming forward beginning in April on Clabbertree and Washington Street to add a left turn lane as you leave Clabbertree Street heading towards
That
Norwood
would be nice.
to turn left. So there'll be a
Especially in the morning.
dedicated lane for that. So.
And how about the other part of Islington, where they have the community center and all that? There's no specific traffic mitigation going on yet?
One of the things that the planning board discussed in its hearing is to require the developer to improve that intersection through signal changes. They looked at actually changing the footprint, changing the area, increasing lanes, adding turning lanes, and there was a concern that it would change the character of the area without improving the traffic situation enough to justify that. So the planning board is leaning towards requiring the developer to replace the signals, to change the signalization so you have an opportunity for a left turn as you're coming south on Washington Street to make a dedicated left turn onto East Street. So they're working with traffic engineers to see how they would do that.
So if you're driving from St. Denis toward Roche Brothers,
Exactly, you'd be able to turn left
That
and go up
left-hand lane that
towards
just
Morrison
sits there.
Park
Oh,
or up to
yes,
the Downey School.
that'd be
So
awesome.
that they're trying to improve that. They did look at improving the traffic coming up East Street into Islington Center and turning to go towards Norwood. The traffic consultants actually suggested it would be beneficial to put a second left turn lane there now. There's one left turn and one straight. They recommended a second left turn lane, but the planning board believes that would have a negative effect. It might move the traffic through more quickly, but it would increase the width of the roadway, increase the pedestrian crosswalk at that location, and they're concerned that the improvements that you get by moving the traffic through more quickly are not sufficient to justify those character changes. So for now, that's on hold, but I will say that one of the conditions of the special permit approval, if town meeting approves the Islington Center redevelopment project, the town would reserve land in front of the new building on the side where the ICC is to be able to widen the road in the future if that was deemed necessary at some point in the future. So we at least wouldn't have to go back and buy back land that we already sold. So we would actually retain that land. So
forethought, that's awesome. This town is on the ball. It is with you at the helm, thank you.
Well, thank you. And thanks to all the people who've come out to the meetings over the last 2 years to discuss this project. I think that there have been some significant improvements. We went from 28 one-bedroom apartments to 18 condominiums. That came at suggestions of residents who really preferred condos to apartments. There was a drive-through associated with the CVS that people were concerned about. That's been eliminated. People worried that MMO would not be able to survive under normal private practice rental agreements. We've brokered a deal with the developer and
That's pretty
MMO
impressive.
that lets them continue on a year-to-year basis in brand-new built-to-suit spaces. And most importantly, I think the best benefit of this project comes to our affordable housing stock. In addition to getting 3 actual affordable units out of the project, we're able to count a total of 12 units on our subsidized housing inventory, which will go
nice.
such a long way to protecting the town against unfriendly 40B projects.
We need to keep the 10%.
We do, and with 2020 coming right down the line and the numbers being recalculated at that point, we need to be on top of it.
We do. And thank you so much.
You're
I really
welcome.
appreciate it.
Great to talk to you as
And I
always.
hope the weather finds you safe, and happy St. Patrick's Day.
To you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
March's weather has been so crazy and destructive, the March Madness has been in full force at Hale Reservation. This month's Into the Woods segment will be to show just how beautiful those destructive forces can be at Hale Reservation. Straight from the desk of the Westwood High School Athletic Director Matt Gillis, this is the first season for the Tri-Valley Hockey League, and the Westwood girls varsity won the championship. We'd like to have a special shout out to junior Kat Keith, who passed the impressive 100-point marker early in February during the season. The boys varsity hockey qualified for the state tournament this year. In fact, it was actually their 36th year in a row. That is the longest consecutive appearance of any high school team in state tournament play. Around the hoop, the boys basketball team made it to the state tournament and had an impressive first round win in front of the home crowd. We'd like to have a special shout out to freshman James McGowan, who was named the Tri-Valley League All-Star and the boys MVP of the Riley Classic Tournament. The girls team also had an impressive season, and Elizabeth Kelly is the girls varsity MVP of the Riley Classic Tournament. Underwater, our Westwood High School varsity swimmers came in third place at their league meet. Up in the mountains, 4 of the Westwood High School varsity skiers qualified for the State Ski Championship. They are senior captains Jillian Adams and Matt Kutzer, and sophomores Ashley Kutzer and Richard Adams. Winter track had a great season and are gearing up for the spring season. Here's what's coming up at the Council on Aging. The COA is pleased once again to host lecturer Gary Highlander for the history series President Who. There are famous presidents and infamous presidents, but there are also forgotten presidents. Come find out who they are and why they've been forgotten. This lecture will be held on April 12th and May 10th, starting at 10:30 in the morning at the COA. There is a $3 donation required. Looking for a place to catch up on the news? Enjoy talking politics in a safe and friendly way? Try to make sense of today's news? Then come join Susan Sprechter to discuss the latest headlines. All points of view are welcome. This month's meeting will be held at the COA on March 28th at 9:30 a.m. Pewissett's Farm is always hosting great events for our seniors. On March 28th, learn knife skills with Chef Dee Dee Emmons, who will teach you how to make 2 dinner-worthy salads. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Inside Westwood. Be sure to check out our interactive community calendar located at westwoodmediacenter.tv. Just follow the links at the top of the page and you're there. Stay safe and warm, and Godspeed. Thank you.